Good morning, everyone. EagleX from ATX EagleX Gaming here this morning with a meta prediction and analysis for NishiFest, which is going to be the last BT10 regional without the new ban list, I should say, because it was just announced this morning that the next Ultimate Cup, it's like a day after EX3 release, will be using BT10, but they will be using the ban list. So I'm probably going to make another video for that meta and what I would predict would happen. But for NishiFest, this is kind of what I'm expecting to see and things to be mindful of. But before we get started with that, I want to go ahead and take a moment. If you guys felt like I've earned your subscription and you enjoyed this type of content, I appreciate it if you can subscribe to the channel, like, and comment below what your thoughts are. Because if I see your support for these types of videos, it lets me know I'm going in the right direction as I see more people subscribing from my active watch time, which is really cool to see that you guys are consistently watching this stuff. But anyways, starting things out. So my first question I'm going to really ask is, if you're aiming for a Nationals invite, what do you expect your record to be to hit that cutoff? So if we're looking at a full capped out regional of 256 players with 8 rounds of Swiss, with the top 16 players getting invites, and this is all under the assumption of no ties are being made, at the end of the tournament for 256 players with 8 rounds, we can expect there to be 1 undefeated, 8 people with an X1 record, and 28 people with an X2 record. So that means if we're playing the full rounds with the full player cap, I would expect roughly 7 players at X2 earning a Nationals invite. So that means if you go X1-1, so 5 wins, or not 5, 6 wins, 1 loss, 1 tie, I would say you're probably in a really safe territory for getting that top 16. Of course, if player cap isn't hit, it can easily change for being X2 being more accessible for players hitting that top 16 mark. But I would expect to go X1-1 to get that Nationals invite realistically. And of course, ties can always change how this is. And then if you guys don't know what the pricing for placements are, you will be getting Event Pack 3 in this. There's participation pricing. I didn't list it here. I just list the placements for pricing. So top 128 gets an additional Event Pack 3 cards in the far right image. 64 get another Event Pack 3. And then when you get top 32 and above, you start getting the finalists cards from the regionals. So we got set 1, we got set 2. Set 1 has the Bokumon, but the newer set is the one with the Lightdramon, the Pyildramon, as shown in the image there. And then if you get top 2, you do get a champion pack of these regional cards as well that have the champion stamp. That's the one I have shown in particular. Exact same cards, just a different stamp on them. But now let's go ahead and talk about what cards or decks we actually expect to see if we're playing a full 8 rounds of Swiss. So I don't think it's going to be any surprise to anyone if I tell you be prepared for Crossheart. If you're playing 8 rounds, I expect the average player to run into 2 to 3 cross players throughout the day. Key cards for cross include Shotmon X4, which will soon be hit on the restriction list, but Nishi will not have the restriction list in effect. But Cross 4 is basically a 1 memory rush target with potentially 1 to 2, even more checks than that, with the full cross stack, using cards like Taiki to help tutor for cards and crossing from sources of tamers. And then you have Shotmon X5, which is normally a finisher in the deck, but you can see it pushed in the mid game or for the mirror match. I have in the top right the Floodgates. Those are the only ways you can really slow them down directly from crossing, because crossing does reduce the play cost of a Digimon. And the 3 listed cards are examples of ones that could stop that reduction and punish Cross in that way. So no surprise, Cross being the most popular deck is going to be my prediction. Followed by that is going to be Metal Garurumon. Metal Garurumon is a deck that never really died this set, because it still does Metal Garurumon things. It's not getting hit at all. It's very consistently topping in the BT10 format, as you can play into Cross really well. If you're worried about them having the Ballistamon blocker to prevent you from doing your OTK combo, you can simply bounce it with the level 5. You can bounce it with the Melga X. So you're not really scared in this matchup, and thanks to the Guru X-Antibody, you have effectively jamming. The only scary thing is checking any options that can remove the stack, so DP reduction or deletion effects will still hit Melga. A very consistent deck that should be no surprise you will probably see 1 to 2 of in the regional. Next, a very popular deck that was attempted to be anti-meta. I think it's underperforming, but people absolutely love Blackwater Greymon Gaiomon decks. A notable thing is there's like a tamer hate build that runs the Mega Dramons and it runs work defeats that try to pop all the tamers so cross cannot do cross things. However, this deck has not really been showing up in top 16s. Just something to be mindful of. Like, I don't think this is the best meta call, but it is very popular. It is okay into Melga. It's not horrible at all, as you're able to get a big blocker thanks to level 4 Greymon Inheritable, and you're able to put consistent damage in and control the board over a lengthier game as you slow down any potential OTK deck. But I don't think this is going to win it all, but it will be present because it is a very popular deck. Next, I would expect people to be playing Alphamon. This is the last tournament they can play before Doru Grey gets hit. So I would probably emphasize more on you would see probably 2 players playing Alphamon, as this deck is still solid in this format. When it's played, it tends to convert well into topping placements, and the players that like the deck will play the deck still. But you may actually see them shift more towards the Secret Alphamon, as the 11k DP threshold is pretty solid in this format, as you'll swing over everything in security on average. So you'll probably see less of the Digivolve Alphamon and more of the Secret Alphamon. Going to be what I'm probably predicting here. But thanks to the whole Or-You-Can combo, you can OTK your opponent effectively and gain enough memory to effectively have a second turn as well. The deck has lots of potential, and I would not be surprised to see this deck win it all, especially in the last tournament, where you can play the deck without the restrictions. Next, I think Jesmon is a super popular deck, and I would expect to see 1 to 2 Jesmon players in your 8 rounds of Swiss. This deck is solid. It is a very spam and high roll style deck, not as high roll as it was originally in BT6, as it's not an OTK deck, but rather a deck that will push a lot of advantage with their combos, using Genkumon X-Antibody and Jesmon GX as its top end to get a blocker and effectively spam out sisters that could enable more memory gaining effects or protection in various forms. But that's basically Jesmon. You play the sisters, you swing for 2 checks, and you have a giant board set up. And ideally you end on a Solarmon, otherwise you are Death X food. But Jesmon is going to be a popular deck. I would not be surprised if you see 1 to 2 of them in your run. Now, next deck to talk about here. I know Armor just won the DC1 event this last weekend. I don't expect it to be popular though. People that like Armor are playing Armor, but you don't really see it in a great meta call environment in my opinion. The Magnamon X-Antibody is solid against Cross, but it doesn't have the greatest matchup into Guru, as they are able to bounce most of your bodies and basically ignore Armor Purge for the most part. If you get into the Magna X against Guru, it's not bad, but Melga X, the level 6, will be able to bounce it. So that's one thing I would be careful of. But a lot of these decks are running the Jesmon GX as a top, and now it's basically a better Blitz Omni for the deck, as you get Scary Attack +1, Piercing Blocker, and you can blitz and tuck a Magnamon underneath to effectively make this guy like 20,000, 25,000 DP pretty easily. But I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a Magna or Armor player, but I just wouldn't expect a whole lot of them. And then the final thing I would say is, this format has the best decks, but there's people that like playing these other decks. I would not be surprised if you run into person playing one of these decks. I don't expect you to run into multiple of them if you're on a solid run. If you do, you definitely ran into more rogue decks, but Blue Flare, Dark Knight, Minervamon, Grandis, Commandramon, they're all decks that do things still. Commandramon had actually a really solid conversion rate in DC1, So I wouldn't be surprised if all these decks you saw a Commandramon player or D-Brigade player somewhere in like the top tables. You might see 2 of them in the top 16. But these are my predictions on the meta-analysis. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think I over-repped a deck in my predictions? Do you think there's a deck I'm sleeping on that you actually could see winning it all? With that being said, thank you so much for watching, guys. Take care and have a nice day.